Hey everyone, me Kevin here. In this video, we are going to go through what Mitch McConnell just said on the floor of the Senate. We are going to understand what Mitch McConnell's plans are for what he believes Congress needs to get done, and he has some choice words for Democrats when he discusses what needs to be done in terms of stimulus. That's right, Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper, the person bills go to die, says that we need a stimulus package this year. Let's listen to what Mitch McConnell has to say. This will have broad-ranging implications, not just for stimulus, but also for the stock market. So let's take a look at this. And remember, if you want to learn everything that I know about real estate or the psychology of money or whatever, finish off Cyber Monday and use that code down below to join the courses with the Cyber Monday coupon code. You can also email me for a bundle at kevin@meetkevin.com. I'll probably be up late today replying to emails. All right, let's get started.
We need to reach agreement on federal government funding to avoid a lapse in basic programs and services. We need to finish the annual defense authorization to shore up the U.S. military's competitive advantage over our adversaries. And we need to continue processing well-qualified nominees for vacancies throughout the government, especially.
Those are the main things that are being done aside from stimulus. Let's get to the stimulus part.
Especially on the federal bench. These are important assignments, but they aren't the only things that Congress should get done before the end of the year. There's no reason, none, why we should not deliver another major pandemic relief package to help the American people through what seems poised to be the last chapters of this battle. This morning, we got yet another major sign of hope. More data appear to confirm that the vaccine developed by Moderna is more than 94% effective. They're going ahead and asking the FDA for emergency use authorization. Experts are calling this news absolutely remarkable. Alongside other promising vaccine developments from Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and others, is continued cause to suspect that victory over this pandemic is not far off. But a huge amount of work remains before us. If Operation Warp Speed remains on this historic trajectory, we need to continue investing in the system that will distribute these vaccines around our country. If we want the small businesses that have already hung on for most of the year to survive a few more months, we need a second round of the job-saving Paycheck Protection Program for the workers at the hardest hit establishments.
So second round of PPP for the businesses in the hardest hit sectors. So presumably restaurants, hospitality, hotels. Remember, he says he wants to see a major package and that we are in the last chapter. We just need to get through a few more months. Those were his words, a few more months. Realistically, though, I think the Federal Reserve and most economists and experts believe a few months might be 7 or more.
Some major parts of the historic CARES Act have already run dry. Many others are set to expire at year's end. We Republicans have spent months trying to renew important help and provide even more.
I don't know about that, Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, remember, was the first person after the Democrats passed the HEROES Act in the House back in May to say we need to pause. We'll talk about negotiations on stimulus later. From May to August, 4 months, we get pause. Nothing out of Republicans. Then between August and now November 30th, yeah, there's been talk, there have been proposals, but there haven't actually been real stimulus packages. It's pathetic. So I don't know if Mitch McConnell can really characterize himself here as being somebody who's been serious about actually getting a stimulus package done. Now look, we had the HEALS Act, that was $1.1 trillion. We had the skinny bill, that was $500 billion. But let's be real, he knew at that time Democrats weren't going to go for those little bills. Those were like showpieces.
We tried to send more than $100 billion to help schools and welcome students and teachers safely to the classroom. We tried to implement common sense legal protections that universities and charities have been clamoring for.
Yeah, and putting $100 billion into a skinny bill is that you know Democrats aren't going to pass is not really trying to get $100 billion to schools. You could have done a standalone bill for schools, but you didn't. You did a standalone bill for the PPP, or at least the House did, and Republicans were all on board with doing a standalone for the PPP. And in fairness, Nancy Pelosi said, nope, no standalone PPP bill unless we get everything. This is true. Now, regarding liability protections, basically, Mitch McConnell's liability protections were corporate immunity. There were no worker protections in Mitch McConnell's liability protections, and there were no consumer protections. Instead, they simply said, look, if you want to try to sue somebody because you got COVID, here's your burden. You have to prove that the other person was grossly negligent. Basically, in court, you have to show that somebody caused consequences to you by ignoring their legal duty based on applicable government standards or guidance. Problem with that is, though, for the first few months of the pandemic, there were no government standards, or there weren't good ones, or ones that didn't change frequently, like masks. The government standard at first was don't wear masks, and then it became, okay, maybe we should wear masks. Okay, now we're gonna have mask mandates. There's no consistent messaging from the government. It's gonna be a legal nightmare. It'd be like impossible to sue someone. The other option is you could say, well, somebody conducted willful misconduct, which is basically like walking up to somebody and purposely coughing in their face when you know you have COVID. That's just an example. Obviously, I'm not an attorney, but this is the way I'm reading it. And you have to provide clear and convincing evidence that they did not follow those standards. And even if you were so good and you got all that slam dunked in court, you could only actually get actual losses incurred. So if you were out of work for 2 months because of COVID and you got paid $4,000 a month, here's $8,000. Those are your economic losses. Oh, had some late fees or whatever, fine, round it up to $10,000. Oh, you want to punish the employer? You want punitive damages as well? That's what you're asking the court for? Fine, we'll double that because you can't get more in punitive damages than what you got in economic loss. So, okay, great. You're gonna go sue a company and fight corporate attorneys for $20,000? Dude, nobody's ever gonna win a corporate lawsuit or a COVID lawsuit under that text. It's not reasonable. Like, there are no protections in there for people.
Tried to pass all of this over and over again. But Speaker Pelosi and the Senate Democratic leader have blocked it. They've been very transparent about all this with their political strategies, laid it right out there. Speaker of the House spent the entire summer and the entire autumn literally gambling with the health and welfare of the American people. She gambled that if American families didn't get any more relief before the election, her party would expand its majority in the House and Democrats could continue demanding the right to remake all of society along far left lines in exchange for passing any more COVID relief whatsoever. But their all or nothing obstruction backfired.
Now, it is true, Democrats did not win as big as they expected to win. However, Democrats point the blame on something different. They don't say, oh yeah, we didn't get as many seats as we thought we would because we held out for a bigger COVID package, which is what Mitch McConnell is implying here. He's saying, hey, like, you know, they held out on getting a bigger package, and if they wouldn't get stimulus, then they were gonna win big. Well, Democrats have a different POV. They say, no, it was their association with socialism, higher taxes, and defund the police that actually hurt them the most.
They have not gained any leverage. Instead, they have lost leverage. And
some argue that potentially, you know, in the event that Biden takes the presidency, some would argue that does give Democrats more leverage.
In the meantime, with the coronavirus surging from coast to coast, the American people have gone entirely without any additional aid, even the least controversial, most bipartisan programs.
That is true.
Because the Democrats say no.
It's both of y'all's fault.
Here's a summary from one news outlet. Quote, Pelosi seems to have overplayed her hand as she held out for $2 trillion plus right up until the election. The results of the election, which saw Democrats lose seats in the House, appear to have significantly undercut her position.
Now, one thing, and not to be political here at all, but one of the things that I did say before the election, I said this many times, so if you've been watching for a while, you know this is true. I said for Trump, in my opinion, to slam dunk the election, we need a stimulus package before the election. That would have helped him a lot, in my opinion. Getting those checks out again would have helped Trump a lot get reelected. It didn't happen. So, it's easy for Mitch McConnell here to say, hey, it's all the Democrats' fault. But the reality is, Mitch McConnell probably would have been better to have, for the Republicans' sake here, probably would have been better to be a little bit more open to negotiating with Nancy Pelosi. Something I said on the channel regularly before the election was the party in power gets punished when you don't help people who are suffering. Now, again, I get that the election is still, tenuous, and I'm not saying, yay, I want Biden, or darn, I wanted Trump. I'm not saying that at all. Just simply saying, the way it looks right now, if there was a stimulus package before the election, I think Trump would have probably done better, and there would have been a more clear win in either way.
By now, it's abundantly clear to everyone that the Speaker will not be getting to fundamentally transform American society in a socialist direction in exchange for more bipartisan relief. The hostage-taking was never going to work. Now, there's only one remaining question for the Speaker and the Democratic leader, just one question. One question, Mr. President. Will they finally, let Congress pass hundreds of billions of dollars of relief on all the subjects where we agree? Where
there is agreement are stimulus checks. Yes, on unemployment pay, but we don't have an agreement on how much, and we don't have an agreement on whether or not it's going to be retroactive. Honestly, at this point, I don't think Republicans are going to go for retroactive unemployment pay. I hope they do, but we'll see. So stimulus checks, some form of unemployment relief, school relief, some form of liability protections, but with consumer and worker protections would probably be good to at least blend that in there. And then obviously dealing with the eviction crisis, extending forbearances for student loans and mortgages. Let's keep going.
Or will they continue to insist that either they get their entire ideological wish list or the American people get nothing at all? Even their fellow Democrats are increasingly seeing this as not a terribly difficult question to answer.
This is very true. Steny Hoyer and multiple other Democrats in the Senate and the House are saying, let's just get what we can. Let's get this done.
For example, over the weekend, Professor Austin Goolsbee, who chaired the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama, called on Democrats to finally play ball. Quote, here's what he said. There are a lot of people really hurting. I hope Congress can agree on something soon. If they have to accept half a loaf, then they have to accept half a loaf. Speaker Pelosi's number two, the House Democratic Majority Leader, feels the same way. Quote, I just hope that we can get agreement. It may not be everything that everybody wants, but at least some significant relief to people.
True.
Our distinguished Senate colleague from Illinois, the Democratic whip, said the same thing. Quote, get something done that is significant. Do what we can achieve now. Now.
And even Joe Biden is saying we just need to do something now. Now, not 6 more months of talking.
Here's the headline from Newsweek. Democrats urge Pelosi to accept smaller stimulus package to ensure relief by the end of the year.
Yep.
Even the Speaker's own Democratic members are now openly campaigning for our Republican approach. Here's one.
It's interesting how Mitch McConnell is basically saying he's rebranding all of these quotes as let's do what the Republicans want. It's not exactly what they're saying, dude. They're saying let's try to just negotiate again and get closer. But, let's get Nancy to come down, I don't know, 700, and why don't you come up 700? And then we can meet somewhere around 1.2 to 1.4, right?
One of the Democratic congressmen who nearly lost his reelection after Speaker Pelosi's stonewalling, quote, we absolutely have to get something done. Mitch McConnell is talking about a bill we can actually pass. We should negotiate that to the finish.
And that in fairness, that is also true. Mitch McConnell does have the skinny bill. It's in writing. Nancy Pelosi could negotiate it. In fact, when the skinny bill was first announced, one of the things we said on this channel was, I thought of a skinny bill as like a skeleton. A skeleton of, this is what we know we can get all Republicans on board with. Let's negotiate that. Let's add the fat to it. Let's add stimulus checks. Let's add a little bit more unemployment pay. Let's add rental relief in there. and sort of work up from a skeleton into something that's more passable. As you add things, you lose some Republicans, you gain some Democrats, until you get to that balance where you have just enough votes to pass, and then you pass it. Like, that's what they should do. Nancy Pelosi says, don't even want to talk about it. That's a pisser. That's what pisses me off. The fact that they don't even want to talk about it. All right, then Mitch McConnell says, hey, let's hope we can have that conversation with Democrats. That's what we've got from Mitch McConnell. The big thing that I take away from this is Mitch McConnell saying, hey, look, we're ready to get something done by the end of the year as well. Let's have a conversation on that skinny bill. Let's have a conversation on that template, or that skeleton, as they call it. Let's add to that. Let's see how Nancy Pelosi responds tomorrow in this ongoing saga. Check out the Cyber Monday coupon code down below. Email me for a bundle, kevin@mekevin.com. And folks, we'll see you next time.